Moving into my childhood home felt surreal. It had been years since I had last stepped foot in this house, and now, with my parents gone to retire in another city, it was mine. The air smelled of aged wood, dust, and the lingering scent of forgotten memories. The walls held the faint echoes of laughter, of footsteps, of a time that seemed distant now. I spent the first few days settling in, sorting through old furniture and personal belongings. It was strange how the house still felt lived in, as if it had been waiting for me to return. But there was something else, something I couldn't quite place. A strange unease that grew stronger the longer I stayed. One evening, while organizing the basement, I came across a cardboard box shoved deep into a dark corner. It was different from the others, dustier, more worn, as if it had been left untouched for decades. There were no labels on it, no indication of what was inside. Curious, I pulled it closer and lifted the lid. Inside, neatly stacked, were dozens of old drawings. At first, I thought they were just random sketches or schoolwork from when I was a child. But as I picked one up, a chill ran down my spine. They were children's drawings, drawn in crayon on yellowed, brittle paper. The first few seemed innocent enough. Houses, trees, stick figures of people. But the more I looked, the more unsettling they became. The details were oddly precise, as if the child who had drawn them had been capturing something very real. One drawing, in particular, made my breath hitch. It depicted a family standing in front of a house. There were two adults, a child, and another figure, drawn in thick, heavy strokes, standing slightly apart from them. The figure was tall, misshapen, and unlike the others, its face was scribbled over in black. My hands trembled as I flipped through more drawings. There was something disturbingly familiar about them. The house looked exactly like mine. The trees were the same as the ones in my backyard. Then I saw it. A drawing of a young boy standing alone in front of the house, clutching a toy in his hands. The details were unmistakable. That boy was me. But these papers, they looked far older than I was. Decades old. That didn't make sense. I sat on the cold basement floor, staring at the drawings, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. The dust in the air felt thicker now, almost suffocating. I knew these drawings were old, far older than I was, but that was impossible. How could there be a picture of me, in front of this very house, on paper that looked decades old? I forced myself to breathe and flipped through more of the pages. Each drawing showed something new, something unsettling. The misshapen figure appeared in almost every one, lurking in the background, drawn in dark, erratic strokes. Sometimes it was watching from a window, other times standing in the doorway. But what disturbed me most was that, in each drawing, it seemed to get closer. I ran my fingers over the dry, crinkled paper. These drawings weren't just sketches. They were memories. Someone had drawn these as if recording something they had seen. A chill ran down my spine. Who had drawn them? Taking the box upstairs, I spread the drawings out on the living room floor. The dim glow of the lamp flickered slightly as I examined them more closely. And then I noticed something else. A signature. At the bottom of one of the pages, written in faint, almost childlike handwriting, was a name. Daniel. I froze. That name. That was my name. My chest tightened as my mind raced. Had I drawn these as a child? Was this some forgotten part of my past? But that didn't explain why the paper was so aged. Why I had no memory of ever drawing them. Then I saw the last picture in the stack, and every hair on my body stood on end. It was my house again, but this time there were no people in the drawing. The windows were dark. The trees were bare. And in the doorway stood the shadowy figure, its face still scribbled out, but its hand was reaching forward, reaching for the person holding the drawing. A cold draft blew through the room, making the papers shift slightly across the floor. And then, from somewhere inside the house, a floorboard creaked. The creaking sound sent a jolt of fear through me. It wasn't just the old house settling. It came from inside the hallway. Someone or something was there. I held my breath, listening. Silence. But the kind of silence that felt thick, expectant. I slowly turned my head toward the dark hallway leading to the bedrooms. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the walls, flickering slightly as if something had just moved past. I swallowed hard. Get a grip, Daniel. It's just an old house. Maybe the wind. Maybe my nerves. I gathered the scattered drawings and stuffed them back into the box, my hands trembling. I needed to clear my head, to step outside, breathe some fresh air, anything to shake this growing unease. But as I stood up, I heard it. A whisper. Faint. Indistinct. But definitely real. I spun toward the hallway, heart hammering against my ribs. Hello. My own voice sounded weak in the heavy stillness. No answer. I took a hesitant step forward, my bare feet making almost no sound against the wooden floor. Another whisper, closer this time. My fingers brushed against the light switch, and I flicked it on. Nothing. The hallway was empty. The doors to the bedrooms were slightly ajar, just as I had left them. But something felt off. The air was colder here, carrying a faint, musty scent. Then my eyes landed on the last door at the end of the hallway, the basement door. It was open. I knew I had closed it. I was sure of it. A cold shiver crawled up my spine. The stairs beyond the doorway descended into darkness, the basement swallowing the dim glow from the hallway light. The whispering had stopped, but the silence now felt heavier, pressing against my ears. I took a step closer, peering into the blackness below. My hand reached out instinctively, searching for the pulsing light. And then, just as my fingers brushed against it, the door slammed shut. I stumbled back, my breath caught in my throat. My pulse pounded in my ears as I grabbed the doorknob and yanked it open again. The basement was empty. Nothing but dust, old furniture, and shadows stretching along the stone walls. But something had changed. The box of drawings. I had brought it upstairs. I was sure I had brought it upstairs. And yet there it was, sitting on the floor in the middle of the basement. The papers were scattered around it again. And, on the very top, placed neatly in the center, was a new drawing. One I hadn't seen before. With shaking hands, I picked it up. It was a picture of me, standing in the hallway, right where I was now. And behind me, a tall, dark figure, reaching out. I spun around. The hallway was empty, but the air felt heavier, like something unseen was pressing against my skin. Then, right next to my ear, a whisper, "Daniel." I stood frozen, my breath trapped in my chest. The whisper had been unmistakable. Someone, or something, had just said my name. The hallway stretched before me, empty yet filled with an unbearable weight, as if the very air had grown denser. I turned my head slowly, my body rigid with fear, expecting to see what? A figure? A face? Nothing at all? But the hallway remained unchanged. The dim light flickered slightly, casting shifting shadows across the walls. I needed to move. Standing there, paralyzed, wouldn't change anything. Forcing myself forward, I turned back toward the basement. The drawing. I had to make sense of it. My fingers trembled as I picked it up again, examining the eerie sketch. My figure was unmistakable, captured in rough but precise strokes. The hallway behind me, drawn exactly as it was. And the shadow, the thing reaching for me. I ran my fingertips over the dark smudges. The texture was strange, almost too real, like the charcoal had depth, like it had been burned into the paper rather than drawn. And then I noticed something new. In the lower right corner of the drawing, barely visible, were small, hurriedly written letters. "You brought it back." My stomach twisted. I hadn't noticed those words before. They hadn't been there before. A sharp knock echoed through the house. I nearly jumped out of my skin. My head snapped toward the front door, my heart hammering. Who the hell would be visiting at this hour? Swallowing hard, I forced myself to move, stepping cautiously toward the entrance. The knock came again, this time slower, measured. I reached for the doorknob, hesitated, then glanced through the peephole. No one. Nothing but the dark, empty street. A chill ran through me. I exhaled shakily and turned the knob, opening the door just a crack. The night air spilled in, cool and unsettling. The streetlight buzzed faintly, casting a sickly yellow glow over the sidewalk. The road was empty. No cars. No people. And then I looked down. A single sheet of paper lay on my doorstep. I hesitated before bending to pick it up, my fingers hesitant to touch it. When I finally lifted it, my breath caught in my throat. It was another drawing. This time, it showed my house. My house, right now. But something was wrong. The windows, every single one, had dark figures standing behind them, watching. And, at the very center, the front door was open, and someone or something was stepping inside. I dropped the paper as my pulse thundered in my ears. This wasn't just a coincidence. It wasn't some prank. Something knew me. Something was in my house. I spun back toward the hallway, toward the basement, toward the room where the drawings had started. And then I saw it. At the end of the hallway, a shadow. Not cast by the light. Not part of the walls. It was standing there, tall, still, waiting. And though it had no eyes, no face, no mouth, I knew it was looking right at me. I couldn't move. My breath hitched in my throat as I stared down the hallway at the shadowed figure. It didn't shift, didn't advance, just stood there, silent, waiting. I wanted to tell myself it was a trick of the light, but I knew better. The drawings had shown me everything before it happened. And now, the latest drawing, the one left on my doorstep, had shown my front door open. Someone stepping inside. And here it was. A sudden, sharp creak echoed through the house. Behind me, my blood turned to ice. The front door. I had shut it. I was sure of it. But now, as I turned my head slowly, dread pooling in my stomach. It was open again. Wide open. The night air seeped in, chilling my skin. Beyond the doorway, the street still stood empty. But I knew I wasn't alone anymore. I spun back toward the hallway. The figure was gone. I wasn't safe here. My heart pounding, I rushed back to the basement. If this thing had started with the drawings, maybe they held the key to stopping it. I snatched them up, flipping through them, searching for something, anything, that could tell me what to do. Then I saw it. A new drawing. One I hadn't seen before. It was me, standing right here, in the basement, clutching the papers, exactly as I was doing now. And behind me, a figure, its hands reaching for my shoulders. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Instead, I did the only thing that made sense. I grabbed a lighter from the nearby shelf. My fingers shook as I flicked it on, the flame casting frantic, flickering shadows on the basement walls. Without thinking, I shoved the drawings into the fire. The paper curled and blackened, the images twisting and burning away. And then a scream. Not from me. Not from inside the house. From everywhere. It was deep, guttural, unnatural, like something not meant to exist in this world was being torn apart. The walls shuddered. The air grew thick and oppressive. I felt something pulling at me, clawing at me, desperate to hold on. And then silence. The house stilled. The weight in the air was gone. I turned slowly, my heart pounding. Nothing. No shadow. No figure. Just me, standing in a basement littered with ashes. I didn't wait. I didn't pack. I left. That house? It wasn't mine anymore. Maybe it never was. And as I walked away, never looking back, I had only one thought. What if I had never burned the drawings? What if, somewhere in another version of this story, it had finished the final picture?